I'm sitting here by the pond with another Tim Talk, and as I was talking in this last talk on curiosity, I brought up story, and I thought I better talk about that. So talk story, we'll call this one. And if you go back in time to our ancestors who lived with the earth before technology, what was one of the things that brought community together the strongest? It was either being with an individual, sitting or walking or working together, or even more amazing, sitting in a circle at night in a teepee or around a fire or out in a meadow and letting someone tell their story. Whether you're telling your story to a group or whether it's a very deep, more personal story that you tell to an individual, or an individual is listening. Story was one of the things that strongly bonded people together, and at the same time educated us and sparked magnificent ideas within us that we could then take and give life to and run with. We have lost that skill to some degree today. Yeah, we get story in movies and TV shows and countless ways on the internet, and politicians, etc. But there's something different now. And one of the great gifts that you could ever give to another human being is to just sit with no judgment. Be a good listener. Remember that one. Be a good listener, attentive, which means you're not thinking about, oh, that person's boring, they got to stop soon. Or I wish they would get done soon. I've got things to do, places to go, I'm busy. Or you're thinking about a zillion other things instead of letting their story come into you and connecting the two of you through the story. Being fully present, that is a gift you give to another being. And when you're able to do it, it's truly a gift. And unique today, sadly. It should be the norm in the perfect world, but it's not. You often think people go to therapy and get therapists. Often because, and I'm not putting down therapy at all, I think therapy, probably some of the best therapists are good listeners. That's probably their greatest gift. But people go to therapy because often, not always, often, because they have no one to talk with. No one who will listen to them tell their story. And it can be so helpful in other ways. Like, I remember when my sister was 42, she died of a stroke. And that devastated me. I remember it just devastated me. And I needed to talk about it because I was there when she died. I held her as she passed, and I saw her soul leave her body. And I needed to talk about it, but I didn't need fixing. So one of the things you want to remember when we're talking about telling stories often is we want to fix things, and maybe there's a place for that sometimes. But often it's just being a good listener is all that is ever needed. And I had a couple of good friends that just seemed to understand that. And I could repeat the story over and over again. And eventually I worked it through my system and I found a peace with her death. I also had a marriage that broke up when I was younger that I thought was going to be forever. And it devastated me. It was like a death for sure. And I had one friend that just sat there for 6 months and let me tell him how sad I was at what had happened and how troubled I was. God love that guy, man. I don't know where he is now. We've parted ways, not in a bad way, but we parted ways. But he saved my life. And one day I woke up and I was okay. It was out of my system. I had healed. And I know it was by being able to tell my story and just have someone listen with an open heart and soul and an open mind and no judgment. I didn't need fixing. I just needed to say it. So that's something I want to mention, how healing it can be. But also, Very important on telling your story or telling story. It can be highly entertaining to tell stories. Like if you go out and you have an incredible experience in life or the wilderness, to be able to come back and share it with your community and be a little animated, have fun with it, dance around the fire, scream and yell, that is an incredible gift of entertainment. We often look for television and movies and things, but we've lost the art of giving that to each other. And educationally, being able to teach about something in a way that's interesting, telling the story. But it all comes full circle back to listeners. There has to be listeners in order to tell your story. And listeners have to benefit to some degree, either by being entertained or by learning or by being willing to give. If someone's hurting and they need to tell their story, just give their presence. It's an art that I think pretty sure that our ancestors had down really well. Not because they were any better than us, but they didn't have all the modern technology to get in the way. The other thing about it is about telling a good story and being a good listener. It's a way of holding. Think of it this way: it's a way of holding space for another being. It's a way of saying non-verbally that I care about you, that you matter to me, and that I'm going to give this time so that you could do so. And another thing that pops in my brain is stories can be interactive. Like if you have a story that to share, maybe you had an experience with someone in nature or with a group, and you can all tell the story together and interweave it, and you see that each individual, while it's the same experience you had, has their own version of the story. And that's really an awesome thing to think about. And that really teaches us a lot too about how different perspectives aren't always wrong, or they're not like a lie or a mistruth. We all experience the world a little differently. That's really a powerful thing. I think that's important to remember. And I'm an Irish guy, and I got Irish heritage, and I love my Irish heritage. I've gone way back and looked at it. My Celtic ancestors, and we always like to say the Irish, like there's got to be a little room for a little bit of a stretching the truth a little bit, or overemphasizing something in a story. So I think there's times when there's entertainment that you can have a lot of fun with a story. You can, like a fish story would be a good example. Oh, I caught that fish and it was like 2 feet long. Really, it was about 6 inches. But everybody's screaming and yelling. You're laughing, and underneath it, everybody knows you're playing. It was really 6 inches long. That's not a lie. I don't believe in lying. I think that's wrong, and I think it's one of the things that damages us a lot, is that we live in a human world full of lies, and we're often told lies or lie. So that's another subject. But there is a room for stretching it a little bit. In the Irish way, and maybe other cultures have that too. But there's a fine line, and you have to monitor yourself. So, talk story, tell your story, get your story out there, be a good listener, give the gift of listening to a story, give the gift of telling a story. And of course, you can always take it to another level, and you can write the story down, become a writer. You can journal the story. But there's nothing like that in-person experience. Tell your story. Be a good listener. Hope.